For plebs, by plebs, dropping the Bitcoin only signal. Pleb Underground. Welcome everyone to the Pleb Underground.
Pleb Underground, each week I lose count. Touch grass and feel ground, the week discount. I give some advice, but this one is paramount. Run your own node or you're trusting whose account. Walk along, no music, my own thoughts. Discover a new gem, feel like Delica with quartz. For a peer-to-peer economy, need to open some ports. Bitcoin getting pricey, the rate has grown some noughts. Another naught, another zero, another thought, one less hero. Price pumping again, this is the year, bro. Family and Bitcoin ain't nothing less dear, though. Feel the magnitude, massive a protector, but without direction, a scalar, not a vector. Just get started, there's no magic effector. Better to be regarded than a tragic projector. My walk every day brings peace of mind. Secured tightly like T's peace, confined. Matured rightly like B's ease of kind. Bitcoin's all discovered, each piece is mined. Back and forth, some call it roleplay. Riding and riding just like the foals play. Fantastic coating, just like a whole bay. Horsing around my horse in pole place. Don't they know MSTR bation's a sin? Custodied assets ain't gonna help us win. I got a little bulk, but my guy's thin. You know I'm the yang and Phil is the yin. Only wanna be me, I could never be ya. Fake butter people up, then be like see ya. Fake the health stuff, no encantas mentira. You're cooked frito and aceite de semilla.
Damn, dude. I don't know what happened in that rhyme. I feel like there was some flexing. I feel like there was possibly some tongue-in-cheek type of comments in there. I don't know, but dude, that was absolutely awesome. Guys, welcome back to the Pleb Underground weekly show. This is episode 117. That's right. And
first of the numbers this week.
Yeah, that's right. First, we're not even in the numbers. We've already kicked it off with the numbers. I like it. And joining us today, we've got our very special guest, friend to the show, fellow Bitcoiner and pleb. It's been a while since we've had a chat. Frito2x. Frito, man, thank you so much for joining us on Pleb Underground.
Thanks a lot for having me, guys. It's been too long, and I appreciate you having me on. It's about time I invited myself on your show.
It's pretty much how that went, but in all honesty, like, there ain't nothing wrong with that. And
wait, so what are you selling? Usually the people that invite themselves on the show like want to sell something. What are you trying to sell, bro?
I'm trying to sell a reframing of MSTR.
That's right, guys. That's the type of episode this is going to be, okay? Frito has paid attention to some of our MSTR framing. Some of it has been poor. Some of it has been maybe less than stellar. And he's going to provide some counter narrative. So get ready, guys, because I'm pretty sure it's going to be a little spicy because I already don't agree, and Frito doesn't agree, and Walton doesn't agree. So let's dive into it and let's move on over to the numbers.
Yeah, the numbers, of course, brought to us by Time Chain Stats and Time Chain Calendar. What do the numbers look like this week, Phil?
At the time of this recording, the block height is 875,623. The Bitcoin fiat exchange, 96,131. Womp, womp. That's right. People actually think that this is dead. It's fucking hilarious. Okay, anyways. Big Macs to BTC. Ant knows of our request. This will be getting updated, but for now, you're still getting 18,664 Big Macs for one Bitcoin. That is a lot of Big Macs. Total public lightning capacity 5,250, and the fastest fee.
And dude, didn't you hear? Like he's building the thing. Like,
yes.
You know the chart that I want. He's gonna make it. He's gonna make it. The chart.
So are you saying that we're going to have amazing updated chart soon?
Dude, yeah.
It's coming.
Just breaking news. Watch the space in some time in the future. Yeah. Ant's going to show some incredible charts.
Wait a second. Is this a breaking massive or is this massive breaking? Because I just want to react appropriately to what's happening. Neither.
Just wait.
Okay.
Just wait. You're going to see.
All right, Moscow time. Ooh, what happened? We added a freaking digit.
What happened, guys?
We added a digit.
I blame Yellow. I told Yellow in Spaces today. I'm like, Yellow, like you stop doing that. You stop doing the Spaces, and what happened to the price? It's like falling apart. Like, come on. You gotta do the spaces again. Like clearly the only thing that was pumping the price was yellow spaces. Now, did it pump it quite as hard as yellow thought it would? No. Did it take a long time to kind of pump the price? Yes, but it did pump the price eventually. And now he's still doing it, and the price is collapsing. So yellow, it's your fault.
Yeah, we blame yellow. Notice that he came back to Bitcoin Twitter this week, and actually specifically today, and we're like,
he sound healthier. That's a good thing. Like it sounded like he needed to do some R&R, so good for him.
Yeah, he sounds healthier, but we're down bad. That's right at 96K.
Yeah, but it's one of those interdependent
so funny.
things. If the Bitcoin dies, then obviously yellow dies. But like if yellow dies, then Bitcoin dies. So like yellow needs to like go and make sure that he doesn't die, so that Bitcoin doesn't die, even though it's dying a little bit in his absence. I think that makes sense.
I knew that Bitcoin price was down because I had a colleague come up to me at work today and tell me that the Bitcoin price was down. So I knew that before Phil even told me.
Tell you or gloated?
Yeah, my dad even texted me today saying, "Oh, it's like Bitcoin hit like this price, but it's down again."
Well, these are people that are kind of concerned. They don't know what's going on, so they always come up to you and they're like, "Hey, Bitcoin price is down," kind of like with a question mark at the end.
I hate that. See, that's like that. You know what? It's like they're trying to figure out what they should think based on your reaction. That's how it feels. You know,
that's exactly it.
Yeah, right. This is kind of weird. All right. Speaking of, we're going to move it over to the numbers here and take a look at our article. And it's kind of funny because I think we talked about this morning, Walt, in Good Morning Bitcoin. So yeah, we're going to debunk some of this. This was funny, right? This is the Corey Bates tweet. There's less than 1 million whole coiners in existence. Are you one of them?
Fed.
It's a little bit disingenuous. As Walton pointed out this morning, right?
Some people want to be part of a club, and if all you have as part of your personality is that you're a whole coiner, then maybe you want to try and attract the other people that also have that depth.
It's a very elegant way of saying this. But yeah, do you think he's over under? I think it's just a useless metric. I used to believe in these metrics, but I just think it's a useless metric because, to your point, right? Everybody can generate as many freaking Bitcoin addresses. It's almost like, what is the number of addresses you can generate per seed?
Lots. The point is, I brought this up in the spaces, is that like, yeah, some people have many addresses, and there are also like, some people that have a lot of Bitcoin that's with an exchange. Now, are those people Bitcoiners? This is where I then tried to define what a Bitcoiner is. And to me, a Bitcoiner is someone that like verifies that they own the Bitcoin, because otherwise they're not proving it. Otherwise they're trusting and not verifying. I think you need to have Bitcoin in self-custody and verify that it is there independently to be a real Bitcoiner. And so it's like, well, how many Bitcoiners are there? Like, are there? Someone's going, oh, there's only 30,000 nodes. I'm like, come on, there's a whole bunch that are running behind Tor. Maybe there's like 100,000. I don't know. Like, how many real Bitcoiners are out there?
Yeah, so essentially node runners, but specifically people who verify their own transactions, right, are Bitcoiners. And I would agree with that, right? I mean, there may be other Bitcoin users, right? People who use Bitcoin, maybe people who speculate with Bitcoin, people who trade with it. I don't know. Is this just a purity test on our part? Is that what that is? Or are we just, I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I'm lost in the echo chamber,
I'll share a thread that I read in a spaces this week that And Hands wrote in 2020.
Oh yeah, nice.
I'll put that in the show notes. Like if people want to understand this
yes
node stuff a little bit more, of like why running your own node and verifying your own transactions is important, not just for yourself. There's a little bit of detail to it.
Yeah.
I don't know what a Bitcoiner is, but I think you know one when you talk to one. And in my opinion, I think that no Bitcoiner should really disclose they hold Bitcoin anyway, right? That kind of undermines the whole security of the whole thing. So officially, I do not hold any Bitcoin, but I have a lot of paper Bitcoin.
Yeah, because the
Well, none
time
of us
chain
do.
holds the time chain holds all the Bitcoin, guys. Like, come on, that's basic. Like, surely the only thing you can hold is keys anyway. Pfft, noob.
Noob. Oh God. So Frito, I guess how would you define a Bitcoiner then? Would you say that Walton's definition is accurate? I mean, I agree with Walton's definition because that's the way I've always seen it.
Somebody who holds their own, you mean?
Somebody
That's
who
what Walton's saying?
validates their own transactions. Essentially, it's somebody who runs their own node. Oh, Walton, you're muted.
They've got to know that they hold their own Bitcoin, right? You've
Yeah.
got to hold your own Bitcoin. And you've got to know that you hold your own Bitcoin independently.
There, yes.
That's it.
I can't argue with that, but
I mean, that's right.
but
It's
to
not
me,
offensive.
a Bitcoiner is somebody who sees the problem, and
if you
is-
see the problem is that other people tell you things and you have to trust it, then the whole point is you have to run your own node because that's how you don't trust anyone else's.
Exactly. Yep. This is
can't
it.
argue with it.
Right? Can't argue with that. All right. I think Walton, you have anything else for the numbers? Or are we good with that?
Walton 1. Everyone else run a node. That's it. Yeah.
What else?
And we'll have. I guess there's a bunch of ones and zeros. That's all Bitcoin is, right? But like, yeah. Come on. Run a node,
Very
please.
sweet.
Thank you. Run a node.
You heard it,
Thank you.
guys. You heard it, guys. Everybody, if you want to be a Bitcoiner, you need to
Run a
run
node or you've got a chode. There we go.
Very nice. All right, guys. It's going to wrap up the numbers, and we're going to move it on over to the Fireside chat. But before we do, a word from our sponsors.
It's like people only do things because they get paid. And that's just really sad.
Pleb Underground is brought to you by KnowHue. Go check them out at knowhue.com. They are building Amazon for Bitcoiners, a one-stop shop for Bitcoin-only brands. New brands are going to be added every month, so go check them out. Don't miss what's happening at knowhue.com. Pleb Underground is brought to you by CypherSafe. You guys all know I am a pet rock enjoyer. Love the swag, love the collectibles. This is the ultimate Bitcoin collectible. That's right, guys. We're talking 16 ounces of solid titanium, the Bitcoin Rolo Triangle. Go check it out at cyphersafe.io. Pleb Underground is brought to you by Thunderfunder. Go check them out at thunderfunder.com. Thunderfunder is a funding portal registered with the SEC and a member of FINRA. Their mission is to provide retail investors access to investments while supporting the growth of open source projects. They love Bitcoin. Check out their shitcoins. Thunderfunder.com.
This week we're joined by Pleb Underground's very own doctor in residence, Frito, who's going to try and prescribe you the Microstrategy pill, and you shouldn't listen to him. It's a scam. It's fake health. Make Bitcoiners healthy again. Fuck all this custody shit. Okay, right, Frito, your turn.
You just destroyed my microphone.
That's awesome, and I am here for this. I almost want you guys to win, but
but incentives.
well, okay.
Well, hold on. We're not against. Okay, let's start off by letting you, Frito, express what. Like, let's start off by you making the statement, right? Let's start off with that. Like, what is it that we're getting wrong, maybe as Bitcoiners who don't necessarily support MicroStrategy, or are not maybe necessarily cheerleaders of MicroStrategy? It doesn't mean that there's any kind of hate or anything like that. It just means that we see it as another, just another iteration of shitcoin based on.
I'm going to explain why it's not a shitcoin, but I'm going to explain why I think not only is it not a shitcoin, but it actually should be celebrated. I don't want to see supported or invested in.
Do you hold it in self-custody?
Excuse me?
Do you hold it in self-custody?
I think that's the point I'm trying to make. Like if you want to make the argument that I need to hold stuff in self-custody, I'm probably doing okay. But I think that it's a force of good for individuals and the Bitcoin narrative in general. And I think Bitcoiners are missing the point because they're asking the wrong questions about it. And when I hear Bitcoiners talking about it, not to point any fingers, but it seems like people are kind of salty about it. And they don't like the idea of paper Bitcoin, and they're worried that it's going to rehypothecate things, and therefore it's a scam. And so I've heard people talking recently, and they'll say, "Well, what do you think about MicroStrategy?" And they'll say, "Well, I don't understand why somebody would trade real money for IOU money." Right? That's kind of like how Bitcoiners approach it. But if you listen to people, nobody's actually saying you should trade Bitcoin for MicroStrategy. Like Saylor doesn't say this. Even like the TradeFi bros that are annoying.
No, Saylor's selling MicroStrategy stock to buy Bitcoin personally, right? Just to be clear.
But hold on. I just want to partially push back on that because Michael Saylor has indicated that it's going to be a better investment vehicle than Bitcoin, right? So he's buying Bitcoin and he has created a superior.
No, I'll push back because he does not use those words.
Which word did he use?
If somebody on shows, because he gets asked this repeatedly, they'll say, "Well, should people buy MicroStrategy or Bitcoin?" And he'll say that it's safer to buy Bitcoin. And if for somebody who pays a lot of attention to equities, you might make back more fiat by buying MicroStrategy than you do in Bitcoin. He's not saying that it replaces the properties of Bitcoin at all. And he's right about you might make more fiat. MicroStrategy returned like 500% this year. I know it's down a little bit, but it still has more gains than Bitcoin. And the reason for that is if you hold the equity, you get this idea of a Bitcoin yield that he came up with, where this year there's 72% more Bitcoin per share. So assuming the equity is priced fairly, it should be worth more in fiat terms. But he's not really promoting it for Bitcoiners to buy. And in fact, he's targeting it for people who can't buy Bitcoin. The vast majority of money.
So here, I just
Frito, just a question for you on on the concept of.
Before you ask the question, sorry, Walton.
Yeah.
No, just quickly. So before you ask the question, right? So here, this is right from Yahoo Finance, and you can see right here, MicroStrategy found it. This is Michael Saylor that said it in a recent interview.
Yeah, they lever up Bitcoin. Exactly. This is my point. It uses debt
as well.
It uses debt, which is the point.
Those are true statements, though. He's not saying it's better than Bitcoin.
Do you want to have an asset-based wealth system, or do you want to have a debt-based wealth system?
He's not saying that he wants to change the wealth system. He's saying that if you're going to buy an equity, this is one that you can profit on the gains of Bitcoin.
No, I'm saying.
Do you even know what capital market he's targeting?
I'm saying, of course, he's talking to TradFi, but I'm saying
No, he's targeting the $170 trillion bond market that cannot buy Bitcoin, and they can't even buy the Bitcoin ETFs. Those are the people buying the convertible bonds,
like pension funds.
Well, that's different too, but yeah, partially the bond market. These billion-dollar
and he's mentioned that several times.
Yeah, well, that's the point, targeting. Guys. That's what you guys are missing. Is the people who buy $2 billion? Well, the people give him $2 billion so he can buy Bitcoin, which is not us buying Bitcoin. That's not coming from regular people. That's coming from people who trade bonds, and that's a giant pool of capital that Bitcoin until now has not had access to.
I think in general we haven't necessarily criticized MicroStrategy because we've said that they're exploiting a loophole in the fiat system by using access to capital markets to lever up on Bitcoin. But what we have criticized is the somehow it's become an accepted shitcoin in the Bitcoin community, and lots of Bitcoin influencers have been pushing MicroStrategy. Now, the way that I look at it, and it's interesting you reference that you might do better in fiat terms, is that often the people pushing MicroStrategy might be Bitcoiners slightly further along in their journey, where they're looking at kind of maybe wealth preservation rather than necessarily increasing wealth, because they're now living off their money, right? And so when you're living off your money, you look at it like a wealth manager rather than a saver or an investment manager. And wealth managers want to create a hedge portfolio such that you can have frequent drawdowns without losing fiat wealth, right? And so I think a lot of these people that are trying to shill MicroStrategy are often people that are a little bit more retired than us mere plebs.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fair framing to say Bitcoin is better savings, and obviously paper Bitcoin's not Bitcoin, and it's you lose all the security of it, and you lose the freedom properties of it. But let's say, so we talked about the $170 trillion bond market. There's only $900 trillion of capital. So like he unlocked like a quarter of the world's capital by doing this. That we should be celebrating that. If you have a retirement fund, you got a 401k or an IRA.
Question: what's your position on SBR? Just out of interest, like is that good? Because
I heard Phil just released something. Like I watched it today on it. I think it's we can't control it. I think ultimately it's good for our bags, and Bitcoin's for everybody, and you can't stop it. So the important thing is, how do we keep it from being changed, right? How do we keep Bitcoin and ossify it so that it can't be developed just because a lot of powerful people own it? I think that's the important question that needs to be asked.
Well, you think we should have ossification?
I'm sorry?
You think we should have ossification?
I think that we should have it. I think we should consider how to protect it from turning into not Bitcoin.
Well, the way to
I don't hear people talking
is for
about
people
that.
to use self-custody, right? The not Bitcoin is custodied Bitcoin.
What I mean is, how do we keep the code from changing?
Bitcoin?
Right.
How do we keep the code from changing to allow people to keep self-custody?
It's not about keeping the code from changing. It's about the Bitcoin like existing in a network where those rules actually exist. If the Bitcoin only exists within a custodian or within a network of custodians, then it only exists within the rule set of those custodians. Like this is kind of this is the thread that like maybe I should pull this up. Like and let me should I pull this up? Maybe I should.
Yeah. No, you have your share screen enabled.
Like if the government reserves it, that just makes it more scarce for people, but that doesn't stop people from reserving it. But I was also in the middle of making a point.
I was kind of doing it in REKT, but like it works now. Whatever. All right. And Hans, genius memer from many times ago. OG memer. He says, this is 2020. I retweeted this week because it's too many people don't understand this node stuff, and I really wish they did. All right, so he says, individual users must validate their own money for Bitcoin to survive. The problem comes when a large part of the ecosystem gets scammed at once, which is how such an attack would happen in practice. For example, consider if Bitcoin had 10,000 users, 10 of them use a full node wallet, while the other 9,990 use an SPV wallet. That means a wallet that's using someone else's node, which is always the case if you aren't using your own node. He continues. If a miner attacked the system by printing infinite Bitcoin and spending coins without a valid signature, then the 9,990 SPV wallets would accept those fake coins as payments and trade the coins amongst themselves. After a time, those coins would likely be the ancestors of most active coins in the 9,990 SPV wallet ecosystem. Bitcoin would be split into two currencies, full node coin and SPV coin. Now, the fraud miners may well become known, perhaps by being published on Bitcoin news portals, but the 9,990 SPV wallet ecosystem has a strong incentive to be against any rollback. Their recent transactions would disappear and they'd lose money. They would argue that they've already been using the coin for a while and it works perfectly fine. And anyway, a coin that can be spent in 9,990 places is more useful than one that can be spent in just 10 places. The SPV wallet community might even decide to use something like invalidate block to make sure their SPV coin doesn't get reorged out of existence. There'd also likely be a social attack, with every Bitcoin community portal being flooded with bots and shills advocating the merits of SPV coin. This is not a hypothetical because we already saw the same thing during the scalability conflict in 2015-2017. Before you know it, Bitcoin would become SPV coin with inflation and arbitrary seizure. Any normal user could download software called Bitcoin Wallet, which they trust and have used before, but instead of using Bitcoin, they'd be using SPV coin. You may be one of the 10 wallets backed by a full node, but that won't do you much good when 9,990 users happily use another coin as their medium of exchange.
Well, I guess if a big entity, I don't think it's interesting to be like, well, should the government do it or not? Because it's out of our hands, really.
Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin is the money of enemies. But I'm sorry, you wanted to finish making a point, though.
Yeah, But like when there's like a lot of like big stakeholders, I guess we just want to be careful it doesn't turn into like a proof of stake social attack, right? But another point was besides the bond market, as an individual, most of us have retirement accounts. And unless you went through the trouble of being able to self-custody Bitcoin in those, and I know you can do that, but most people don't. It's useful to have a paper Bitcoin vehicle if you want to invest in, Bitcoin's price increase. I can tell you that if somebody went 100% into Bitcoin stocks, they did pretty well in their IRA.
Mm-hmm.
And if your IRA went up, then it actually is good if you hold real Bitcoin because now you never have to spend or stake your real Bitcoin. And there's a pretty solid use case for that if you believe Bitcoin price is going to go up. So that's useful. So there's also they just got in the NASDAQ 100.
Mm-hmm.
So besides these convertible bond traders that don't give a damn about Bitcoin, but they're buying billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin, you just got $350 billion worth of capital that's investing in Bitcoin without knowing it. So you're turning a bunch of people who are anti-Bitcoin into Bitcoiners with that attack as well. So you're really Trojan horsing like a lot of the system with this vehicle, which is pretty awesome, really. Because of that Bitcoin yield thing, which I know is kind of bullshit because we don't own the Bitcoin, I completely understand that. But if you want to have an appreciation in fiat price because you want to spend money in the next year or so, like on a medium-term basis, I think there's a reasonable use case there to buy MicroStrategy instead of Bitcoin. Now, should you do that with your savings?
Wealth management.
Well, I'm sorry?
That's what I'm saying. It's wealth management. It's because you want to do drawdowns on your portfolio. That's exactly my point.
Okay. But those are kind of like the use cases of this thing. And
go ahead. Sorry.
If somebody says, well, it's a shit coin, I think that's kind of inaccurate because
it's state sanctioned, right? Like there's no way this thing can get like got by authorities because it's a scam. Like it's advertising what it does, and people are choosing to invest in it. I say it's a shit coin because you're choosing to custody your Bitcoin with someone else essentially, and that's
not
my
true.
definition.
Again, most of these dollars we're talking about aren't somebody choosing to custody something else instead of Bitcoin.
If you're a Bitcoiner, right, and you're choosing, like, you could just have self-custody Bitcoin, or you could have Bitcoin and some MicroStrategy, like.
So one of the arguments, right?
It's kind of like a silly argument, though, because
fair enough, maybe it's just niche. But that's the audience.
If somebody has like a shit ton of Bitcoin, they have like 5% in this other vehicle.
I don't assume that all these like bond buyers like watch PlebUnderground. I assume like that our audience is mostly like Bitcoiners that actually maybe are Bitcoiners that maybe are getting tempted by the MicroStrategy play because they're being influenced to do so. So I'm talking, I think, to the audience of the show, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe if it's all you bond guys out there, like respect.
To say like you got to be 100% in Bitcoin is kind of silly unless somebody like doesn't own shares or a car and they haven't maxed out their credit lines to buy Bitcoin with it, right? If you haven't done your own 100% speculative attack on the dollar by buying Bitcoin, then you're not a Bitcoiner by that logic.
Oh, my logic is own Bitcoin and use a node, right? Like verify that you actually have Bitcoin. That was my definition. Like, can you be a Bitcoiner and own MicroStrategy? Sure. Does that make you a shitcoiner as well? I kind of think so. I think you can be a Bitcoiner and a shitcoiner, right? Like,
how do you define a shitcoin? Let's go down that road.
How do I define a shitcoin?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's anything that you can't self-custody and verify that you self-custody.
Yeah, I would define it different. I would define it as anything that doesn't have a use case, right? If my neighbor, they just came up to me last week and they're like, what do you think about XRP, right? And I'm like, what's the use case of XRP? And if you can't answer that, then it's a shitcoin. But there's use cases for MicroStrategy.
I think that's a scam coin. I think there's a difference between a shitcoin and a scam coin, but each their own.
Now we're dumpster diving.
Well, okay.
I'm all down for set theory conversations.
I mean, so one of the reasons I think Bitcoiners are salty about this is these TradeFi bros just came on the scene, right? We never heard of any of them, right? And they're like, getting a lot of views, and they're all talking about how smart they are and kind of pounding their chests. And we throw salt at them. They tell us to have fun staying poor. There's kind of like this schism there. And I think what happened was that they saw this thing. They didn't really understand Bitcoin for the most part, from what I can tell. They saw this thing. They saw these metrics in their lives, that their workflow. Some of them, most of them didn't. And they killed it with this MicroStrategy thing. And they were, telling everybody, oh, look how cool this is. You guys got to pay attention. All the Bitcoiners were like, fuck you and your shitcoin. We don't want to listen. That's a shitcoin. It's paper Bitcoin, right? You know what they did? They got sick of us doing that. And they're like, oh, yeah, have fun staying poor. And they started posting pictures of their Porsches and stuff. Right. And it was kind of classless, but it's no different like American Hodl's big head doing the same thing and us posting.
But that's all cringe.
Huh?
But that's all cringe. Like, it doesn't matter who does it. It doesn't matter who does it. It's all fucking cringe. I mean, I know tons of broke motherfuckers who have Porsches. Who gives a shit?
Absolutely. But the Bitcoin community, the maxis quote, mostly do the same thing. Not you guys. You guys are classy. I'll give you that. Right. But like, we can see where it's coming from. Was we just didn't listen to their very valid points. We're like, you guys are idiots. Right. And now they're like, fuck you, I'm driving a Porsche. Right. So now nobody wants to listen to anybody.
Oh yeah, talking of now driving a Porsche, right? Like I trolled Dieter in Spaces like a week ago, being like, "Hey, like you're super rich now. Like, are you getting a pool bigger than Clat?" He's like, "No, I'm good with the pool." I'm like, and like you're still driving like a Jaguar even after like they came out the closet. And he's like, "No, actually, I bought like a really nice Porsche, like a 911, like GT3 recently." And we're like, ha, like it's
But I'll make a point
Plan
though.
D's living life, bro.
Like, I respect you guys more. I think that you guys, you guys have been in it. You've been through bear markets. You're always just, all about the ethos, right? And I don't think that those guys quite get a lot of that stuff. But the reason, well, I think they're right about some of the price appreciation stuff. But the reason that it's not a shitcoin is that MicroStrategy serves use cases that are actually good for Bitcoin.
So, I wanted to ask you a question. Again, so, hold on. So, I just want to ask him, like, what are your thoughts on the idea that MicroStrategy, right, is actually somehow siphoning essentially money out of Bitcoin? And essentially the way that happens, right, is that somebody that would, go and buy Bitcoin instead, right, because they've heard the story, right, that MicroStrategy may outperform Bitcoin. They may, because again, to your point, it's all normies. So for them, they're just looking at it like investment vehicles. They don't understand the true value proposition between the two assets, right, and what the trade-offs are. Now, I understand, right, the other side of this, because I've thought of this too. MicroStrategy is buying Bitcoin. So essentially what's happening is that this person, right, is paying for MicroStrategy shares, right? And and by doing this, they're actually getting less Bitcoin for their money. And the value proposition that Michael Saylor is making is that, no, I'm showing you that you're getting more Bitcoin because he's purchasing more Bitcoin with debt, right? Like last year, MicroStrategy did not have $4.3 billion in debt. And I understand that, it's all, structured, and it's, some of it is 4 years out, some of it is 5 years out, whatever it may be. But I just.
Yeah. So there's a lot in there.
Yeah. Yeah, there is. Sorry. Well, the question is this. Do you think that this is true, that the MicroStrategy shares are siphoning money out of Bitcoin? Right.
You mean as far as like money that would
as far as people
be in the ecosystem?
Yes, that's right. People, instead of buying Bitcoin, would then go and buy MicroStrategy.
I think the answer there is absolutely not. Like the money, this one little company is like worth like what, like $70-80 billion. They're buying more Bitcoin themselves than they're making right now. Like, they're setting the floor, which we all should be thanking them for. And the money that they're bringing in that otherwise would not buy Bitcoin dwarfs the retail guy that would be buying it. And if anything, the harm is, okay, maybe there's a retail guy that otherwise would own Bitcoin that doesn't. And so he loses some of the freedom and security of that. I guess you could see on an individual level, like I don't think people shouldn't own Bitcoin. Don't get me wrong. So maybe there's some harm there. But as far as your question, absolutely not. He's bringing in billions and billions of dollars buying Bitcoin, and he's convincing other people to do the same thing. So he's accelerating the appreciation of Bitcoin, no question.
Okay, 2 points. First point is child abuse. Check screenshot. Like this is like distorting the language development of the children of supposed Bitcoiners. Like Bitcoiners should really stop this nonsense. And secondly, okay, yeah, they're buying Bitcoin, but actually, what happens with that Bitcoin? Oh, it sits with their registered custodian, which is like Coinbase and BitGo. And again, I make this point. What's the play? Well, what's been happening the last couple of years? Well, since the ETFs and since Microstrategy doing better and better and better, what's the number of coins held with like US custodians? It's probably approaching like 2+ million. Coinbase, is holding a lot of Bitcoin, and maybe this is all the plan. Maybe the plan is, well, we just keep onshoring more and more Bitcoin to the United States until we kind of hit a peak held by the registered custodians, and then we can just rug the lot, right? Like we can just go, hey, we'll just add 3 million Bitcoin to the US Strategic Reserve. Fuck all you. And what are people going to do? They go, well,
that's why you should hold your own Bitcoin, though.
Right, I agree, and this is my point. But like, people don't hold their own Bitcoin. People hold Bitcoin on Coinbase, and they hold MicroStrategy in their retirement account.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, not including MicroStrategy, the ETFs alone hold about, according to the Goggle machine, 887,000 Bitcoin, or 4.57%. And then you tack on MicroStrategy's 400 what? And it's all on Coinbase.
Well, no, MicroStrategy is like 50-50 Coinbase BitGo or something like this.
I mean, the ETFs, though.
In my head, there's 1 million of institutional Bitcoin with Coinbase, and there's probably about 1 million of retail as well. So there are a lot of Bitcoin with custodians, and this is what I feel like the more people drive this conversation of you should go for these other kind of financial plays, you're just preaching against self-custody, like implicitly, whether you like it or not. Like,
but understand, that's not what I'm doing. That's not what I'm saying.
I don't think that's what you're trying to do. That's I think yeah.
But I'm saying there's use cases, and it's like an ETF that gives you back more Bitcoin per share with time, which is in that way kind of great.
Isn't the promise of all shitcoins to like give you yield on your Bitcoin?
It is.
I guess.
Until they don't.
I mean, if you really looked at this thing, the math checks out.
The math checks out until it doesn't, though, right?
So hold on a second.
Isn't there a point at which it could?
But it's paper Bitcoin and it's not Bitcoin.
Okay, so hold on a second. Hold on. Let's take a look at and I'm not using this as like this valid necessary source. I'm just saying like here's an example of possibly somebody who doesn't believe what's going on, right?
So I never heard of that person, but okay.
I know, it's okay. I mean, it's I have
guy?
You know who that is? Tatiana Kaufman. Anyways, dude, take a look. Right here. What is it? Author of The Myth of Money, investor in Moonwalker Cap, and likes Bitcoin, and has a shitcoin punk. Okay, great. So here, did a bit of research, right, on the MSTR debt structure. We have quite a bit of time to go until the Ponzi topples, but with each new tranche of debt issued, we get closer to that point. Eventually, the debt will, hold on. Eventually, the debt will far eclipse equity. The trading premium will disappear. The conversion prices on the notes will feel unreachable, and equity price will collapse under the weight of senior debt, particularly during a gnarly Bitcoin dip. But y'all are safe to keep playing this game for at least 6 to 12 months. Now, that's an interesting timeline, right?
I'll make a couple of points, though. They already survived the last Bitcoin bear market.
Yes, they did.
And at that time, they were underwater. And you can afford to gamble more when you're winning.
Yes.
And they're absolutely winning. Their debt is non-recallable. So if Bitcoin goes to $1, they don't actually have to pay their debt. And most of the debt is at 0% interest. So they're borrowing at 0% interest, depreciating money to pay for a thing that goes up 63% a year. That's a pretty good bet. Most of the debt isn't paid back in dollars. Most of it is in these convertible shares.
Mm-hmm.
So they're issuing shares. And every time they issue shares, the way it's structured right now, they get to buy 2 Bitcoin for every dollar they spend. So when they issue more shares, they're not diluting you, because for every dollar they spend out of your shares, you get $2 worth of Bitcoin back into the company.
Frito, I understand all of this. This is the funny thing is like I don't feel like with Bitcoin it's like with Bitcoin you understand it more, then you're like, okay, I'm gonna buy it. With MicroStrategy I understand it more, and I'm like, no, I'm good. Like I understand or like that it is like a very very clever play using a bunch of fiat leverage and like.
But I'm responding to Tatiana right now. Tatiana says they're going to go underwater, and all that Matt says, no, they're not. That's silly, right? So it's kind of like bullshit argument, you know. And then, by the way, when somebody says something's a Ponzi, I think the burden should be on the accuser.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, why should I'm not going to be like, oh, it's not a Ponzi because of X, Y, and Z. Okay, explain to me how that's a Ponzi. Go ahead.
It's not a Ponzi.
Well, so yeah, no, so exactly. I don't actually think it's a Ponzi. I just wanted to point out that's another argument. But what I do think, which is something I have seen before, and I understand that these companies did not have Bitcoin as an asset, which makes it different, right? Somewhat different, is that you can over dilute your share base, right? You can over dilute your shareholders. You can make it so that your shares, essentially, there's too much of it. There's too much supply for the market. So I understand that he wants to continue to buy Bitcoin, right? And that demand is supposed to come from a market that is going to be hungry for those outsized gains, those outsized returns. Okay. So I get that Bitcoin does what it does, but the problem for me that I see is that without Bitcoin, this company has done nothing. So the whole bet is on Bitcoin, which brings me back to
what do you mean they sell?
Why not just buy Bitcoin,
bro?
Yeah, I know, but if you go take a look before 2019, nobody fucking even knew who they were, and I know that that's not an argument against MicroStrategy necessarily, but it's the point of,
because
he wasn't making like groundbreaking operating income and free cash flows and stuff like that.
You're not wrong. He's come out and said he was dying without it, but that's why. But I don't think somebody should, like, if you had to choose one, you should buy Bitcoin.
Yeah,
right? I mean, no question. But he's not diluting his shares. He's accreting his shares. I mean, like, it's mind blowing. Each share got 72% more Bitcoin per share. Okay, you're buying paper Bitcoin. It's not Bitcoin. If that's what you want to do, if you want to buy an ETF, you could buy an ETF that gets 1-to-1 all the time, or you could buy MicroStrategy that gets 72% more paper Bitcoin per share. It's mind blowing.
Frito, right? why is Saylor selling his shares then rather than buying more?
He's probably buying real Bitcoin because that's what he wants to do, and that's good for him.
Okay, but then why shouldn't other people do that? Like if the CEO of this vehicle that everyone's saying you should invest in is actually selling the thing that people are saying.
Well, because he's not selling all of his shares. He's got billions and billions.
He's not selling all his shares because he's pretty not allowed to, like amongst other things. Like, but
I don't read too much into what people do with their money. Maybe he wants to buy a yacht. I don't know.
Tell you one thing, if you take a look at the insider buys and sells on MicroStrategy, a lot of activity, but that doesn't really mean anything, right? I'm not trying to FUD MicroStrategy or anything like that, but a whole lot of action there, a whole lot of sell action. Michael Saylor.
I mean, I think he's adopted
like great.
I think he's advanced like the adoption of Bitcoin by like 4 years just by himself, which is, you know.
Okay, so hold on.
The reason it's a shitcoin is because like shitcoiners, you know, like always the shitcoiners, they sell you their token and they're selling it.
They're buying Bitcoin.
Like, classic.
Okay,
right?
so
I like Bitcoin, buy my shitcoin.
Yeah,
right? There we go.
One of the things,
state sanctioned, it has access to capital markets, and yeah, it's basically a sure bet if you like custodied assets. There you go. So enjoy.
You guys don't like that bankers are profiting on this, and you know.
I don't care.
What does the white paper read as? It's like, you know, it's a peer-to-peer, you know, cash, like, you know, it's not about intermediaries and custodians, but like each their own. You do you.
Bitcoin's for enemies, right? Like we always say this. So that means it's the people that I don't agree with, right? Like it's the people that I don't want necessarily part of a network, but guess what? I can't really stop it. I mean, I'm not worried about the bankers making money. Like they're going to make money anyways, right? They always win. So
right. Well, I think that institutionalizing this Bitcoin stuff on the surface is like ugly, and I don't want the people that laughed at us and, you know, stole from us forever to profit. I don't like that. But I also think the alternative is then they fight us. You know, the alternative is like legislation and bans and really making it hard. And I'd rather have this smooth transition, that's kind of like approved by the financial system than have a big war over this. And I actually would prefer this as like kind of a transition of the fourth turning as opposed to the alternative, even though I don't like corporate types.
So I believe that in Bitcoin, like possession is 10/10 of the law. And if the more Bitcoiners don't have custody of their Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm. But that's a false dichotomy, man. Like, you're like, you do you, as if like, assuming people don't do that. But I haven't sold Bitcoin ever, right? It's like,
no,
it's like, and if you can win in this fiat system, you don't really
always
have
Bitcoin.
To.
It's only if you look at like this money that's in like retirement accounts as being locked there, and you don't even like you could theoretically take it out, take the penalty, and buy real Bitcoin, and some people do, and some people apparently have done very well by doing so. Like, and I respect everyone's individual move, but I do also believe that the reason gold failed was because it was custodied, right? And you have a bunch of paper on top.
Yeah.
And I
agree.
I feel like the more we have incentivized ways to have paper Bitcoin, the same is true for Bitcoin.
Yeah, but you're like, you could take your IRA out and buy Bitcoin with it, but like nobody's. I mean, I don't want to say nobody. People that do it. Fine.
I'm more than 100% Bitcoin, and I own zero custodied assets.
That's cool. I respect that.
But I'm not like close to retirement really, and like it's not like. I have a portfolio that I want to do drawdowns on. Again, different people are at different stages in their financial wealth journey, and they should make decisions, accordingly for themselves. And
we're not going to convince the masses to take a hit on their IRA, tax advantage account, though. Like, there should be a tool for those people that aren't going to do that.
Yeah, exactly right. There's a tool, and it has trade-offs. So let me ask you this, because we're gonna. I think we're going to move on to the REKT and Hopium. But before we do, do you think that MicroStrategy is essentially part of like the Trojan horse, vehicle of Bitcoin, right? Like you just said before, right? Like that this transition stage, right? It's kind of ugly, right? Like, so for me, this is where my hope comes from. My hope is that it's part of the Trojan horsing, but I do get afraid because unfortunately, I've seen companies over dilute their shares, and I get that Bitcoin's so hot right now. You know what I mean? So, and I understand that he survived already one bear market.
Yeah.
The problem with that for me is that I've seen other shitty companies survive one bear market and then blow up the next.
Right.
But anyways,
there's added risk in buying an equity. I don't think he over diluted, but time will tell. As far as the Trojan horse thing, that's a good point. Some of the distaste also is Saylor has said some anti-Bitcoin things recently.
Yeah,
and I don't like that. Stuff. I don't like that. He said that the crypto anarchists, shouldn't be all about self-custody, and that was hurtful, and it made me mad. And I don't know what his game really is, but I'm hoping, I don't know, but in my opinion, and I'm hoping that's the Trojan horse. He's telling banks that they should be involved in custodying this thing, and it's not out of their hands.
You're hoping he's playing 4D chess on them rather than on you. This is beautiful. Like, dude, I think you're getting soft, man. Like, you're getting old. Like, come on, Frito, we got to fix this.
I think he wants Bitcoin to win, man. He has no family. His legacy is Bitcoin.
Say, my God, take us to the chosen land.
You guys, this is what happens when you have these types of conversations.
But I don't know. And hey, you might be right on that point. And I didn't like it when he said that.
I didn't like it either. In all honesty, I was super disappointed, right? Because you want them to say the things that make you feel good. So, and this kind of goes back to the whole not having heroes thing. And before we wrap up this segment, I just want to say one last thing about this. Just because we're not fucking cheerleaders, right? Like, just because we're not like, yay, it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. Like, it doesn't mean that you hate the person or hate what they're doing. It just simply means in some cases that we're looking at it cautiously, right? Like,
well, that's what we do.
I mean, it's not our first rodeo, man. What do you want?
If you're a cuck, like you'd rather watch someone else hold your money than hold it yourself.
I don't have MicroStrategy, so
I mean, one of the Bitcoin's disadvantages is it doesn't have a marketing department, and he's a more powerful marketing department than any of the shitcoins marketing departments. I as far as having a cheerleader for Bitcoin, I mean, you couldn't ask for anything better than what Saylor's doing, really. Do we have a better cheerleader for Bitcoin
currently?
I mean,
I think we have to define all of those metrics. I think we would have to actually define all of those metrics, because
making it accepted by the general public.
David Bailey's doing more for Bitcoin. I think Phil's doing more for Bitcoin. I think the meme is doing more for Bitcoin.
I think Frito's doing more for Bitcoin.
I think Phil's. I would say you guys, your ethoses are more pure.
Because Bitcoin is self-custody, not like held with a custodian. I'm done.
Guys, look, this is obviously a very controversial topic that is not going to go away. You know what? Let us know what you think, right? Tell us in the comments. What do you think? Is this good? Is this bad? Is this just, we'll wait and see? I don't know. I'm always trying to rationalize that this is good. Guys, it's going to wrap up the Fireside chat. And we are going to move it on over to REKT.
First, this week on REKT, apparently Bitcoiners by BlackRock. Apparently, this is not peer-to-peer electronic cash.
I'm sore, Walton.
I think what the particular corner of the internet is trying to convey is that, like, self-custody is important and ETFs are bad, like, because you're just going to, like, enable BlackRock to and the custodians to have all control, because if you don't have it in self-custody, then it's a permissioned wealth system, right? Like, you don't have true access. Yeah. All right. Up next on REKT, we have a real story. Breaking. Dennis Porter. He says, just a few hours ago, the lesson to the haters is don't talk shit about me behind my back for years. Don't lie about me to my donors. Don't attempt to discredit the work of my team. I don't forget these attacks. Decisions have consequences. I will take everything from you. And then we'll get on to the tweet from David Bailey in a moment, but I also have the same message in a different form for some of you. Yeah, someone who's way more important than Saylor, friend of the show from just last week, the little yellow puppet man, and here conveying the message from Bitcoin's newest psychopath. Here we go.
I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want, but you have to realize I have a particular set of skills. Skills I have acquired over a long breaking news career. Skills that make me a nightmare for haters like you that talk shit about me behind my back. Don't lie about me to my donors. Don't attempt to discredit the work of my team. And don't forget these attacks. Decisions have consequences. And if you continue, I will look for you. I will find you. And I will take everything from you. Jealousy is a disease. I hope you get well soon, Dave Bailey.
Shots fired.
Yeah, he says, so he goes on and continues and said, get well soon, Dave Bailey, because there was another tweet from from Dennis, I think, at some point that was like, oh, there we go. Jealousy is a disease. I hope you get well soon, David Bailey, right? So he's continuing the quotation there. The accusation against Dennis is that he steals people's stuff and claims it as his own, right? Here's a beautiful meme made by David Short. And here we have the Bitcoin Policy Institute making something, and Dennis, of course, says, oh, you made this. I made this, right? It's the classic meme.
Of course.
But this is the case, right? There is news, and then it is breaking from Dennis, right? I said this a couple of weeks ago on the show. If you're leaking information, then you're not actually involved in the thing, right? Because it's against your interest to do so. And so if you're leaking something, you're just consistently advertising that you're just outside the door. What was that meme really about? Like, well, he took a BPI document, put it through ChatGPT, and then claimed it as his own. Like, there was a step to it as well. But like, is he just like, is he just calling out the haters because he got caught out on stealing things, on like copying things, or is there anything more serious than this at play? Well, David Bailey, CEO of a whole bunch of bullshit and entertainment and Bitcoin, etc., says Dennis Porter is a scammer. He effectively tried to steal donations from BPI when we worked there. He was caught and had to be fired. He leaked the SBR to the media ahead of Nashville, and when I asked him to stop because it jeopardized the announcement, he took my texts and gave them to the media as proof, and bizarrely took the SBR EO, which I assume is executive order. BPI ran it through ChatGPT to reformat it and claimed it as his own work. This is just what he's done in our interactions, but I've had many people reach out to me with their own horror stories. This is why I've banned him from the Bitcoin conference. In my entire career, I've never met someone like Dennis before. I honestly think he suffers from psychotic narcissism, and I highly recommend keeping your distance. I hate writing this post. I realize it's unprofessional, but I felt like it needed to be said. The longer it goes on said, the more people he will scam. One time he told me, I'm a psychopath and I see Bitcoin as a vehicle to eventually become elected to office. And I had actually heard this quote about a month ago from someone else, the exact quote. So, yeah, interesting. He says, I thought I was kidding, but it turned out he might have actually been one of the few truthful things he ever told me. I'm sure he's going to target me for posting this. I've kept this private for multiple years. If Dennis Porter has scammed you, I'd appreciate if you also say something so I'm not having to be at the center of this drama. I know Predator retweeted saying, it's kind of funny because, Dave Bailey's a scammer, and a scammer calling out a scammer is kind of ironic. But there's scammers, and then there's psychopaths, and there's many Bitcoiners that call themselves psychopaths in a playful way, but I don't think suffer from true psychopathy. So, doctor, what's your diagnosis?
Narcissistic personality disorder. But I don't understand what the end game is.
Is that main character syndrome for our Zoomies listening out?
Yeah, it's like, is there an end game to being the fake Toshi of state Bitcoin reserves? I'm not really sure. I don't really see where he's trying to go with it. And I kind of want to say daddy chill, like that meme.
There's an endless rent seek at the end of that rainbow. That's what there is, right?
Politics is a machine that keeps on going, keeps on having,
right. I mean, like, that is the most, you go into politics not because you want to affect change. You go into politics because you essentially want to do nothing and seem like you're doing something. Like, I understand that there are some people who go into it. Sorry?
I said that sounds kind of nice,
right? Doesn't it? It sounds great. The only problem is that you're mooching off of the general public to essentially LARP as.
I think that's not true of
making
all
change.
People, but I think
no, it's not.
The ones that
but
do,
a lot
the ones
of them
that
it
do
becomes.
well in these power structures are often of that type, right? Because they're focused on that sort of thing.
We were talking
the one
before
hand
the
washes
show.
the other.
Yeah, just like the whole game is just trying to figure out who you should listen to and who you should kind of like avoid, and I haven't really seen much of what he's done lately, I guess I'll say.
But yeah, going back to this whole thing, right, from David Bailey putting out that tweet, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, right? Because like Walton said, Bitcoin Magazine, they showcased enough scammers, right? It's nobody's hands are totally clean, right? Like that's just how it works, right? Like all humans are hypocrites, right? All of us, like that's just the way it works. It's part of a human. Our person, who we are, is dualistic in nature. So that being said, I'm not making an excuse for Dennis Porter's behavior or whatever, but I will say this: saying that you're going to take everything away from somebody it sounds very familiar to me from other people that I have dealt with in my life that have essentially this type of narcissistic, I don't know if it's like emotional immaturity or this like Machiavellian type of narcissism. Vengeance.
Like if they want to nuke you, if you kind of
you know what I mean? So it's like it's this cycling between the victor and the victim, right? Like they're never in between. It's not that they could have done something to provoke this behavior upon them. It's that, right? It's just a bunch of jealous haters, right? And this is where you get into the whole fucking narcissism thing. So I do think it's super cringe. I've always found it really difficult, the people that cheerlead themselves. Something that I learned, and maybe this is incorrect, but normally if you are actually doing whatever it is that you say that you're doing, I think other people will sing your praises. If you have to sing your own praises all the time, it's kind of like calling yourself an OG. It's like this is like conferred status. It's like it's come from, and I'm not saying that this is some status, but I'm just giving this as an example.
It's like saying I am well respected.
Yes. Whereas instead it should be the
Toshi kind of bullshit.
Exactly, it is. And you know what? Pirate hit the nail on the head when he put out the tweet today, saying that like it's CSW vibes, right?
Oh, that's what I just said.
Oh, you did? Okay, sorry.
I call him the fake Toshi of state reserving.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear that part. I was thinking CSW. Fake Toshi still doesn't click for me yet. He's just always CSW.
I'm always suspect of people who are like names, but I can't figure out like what they did or what they said. That always is a little suspicious to me.
Walton, you got another REKT for us?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
1 sec.
No worries.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. Up next on REKT, we have a mini essay from friend of the show, Lola Leitz, who thinks that the strategic Bitcoin reserve is going to make us all wrecked, and Bitcoin is going to suffer as a consequence. So this week, as you will probably know, the Bitcoin Policy Institute published a bill for, I believe, essentially for Senator Loomis, right, for the strategic Bitcoin reserve. It is yet to be signed, by all the parties, by Trump, etc. But there is this bill that has been created. David Bailey, of course, one of the original founders or donors of BPI, and also seemingly part of the Trump campaign this year. Of course, being very pleased that this is now in existence and says all it needs is a signature, and America's strategic Bitcoin reserve is real. And people think, in part the reason that the price is pumping is because now there's going to be all this additional buy pressure, and so yay, number go up. But Lola Leitz doesn't think this is all a good thing. Why? This draft by BTC Policy Org, I'm quoting here. This draft by BTC BTC policy org for a strategic Bitcoin reserve is an absolute nightmare for anyone using Bitcoin as money and a huge disappointment for the future of BTC. The draft order defines Bitcoin as a finite store of value asset akin to digital gold. As someone who has lived on Bitcoin for a fairly long time, I can say that Bitcoin is not merely a store of value asset, but a money I use for payment and day-to-day purchases. Defining Bitcoin as a store of value asset reinforces the ossification narrative. Who needs to move a stonk several times in a day, which may put developers at risk when prioritizing changes to BTC to make it more usable as money. Think scaling, for example. With this definition, a soft fork to activate covenants may become an issue of US national security that goes against the US definition of its primary goals, directly putting developers in the firing line of the United States government. The draft states that federal agencies such as the US Marshal Service may not auction seized Bitcoin off, but must contribute them to the strategic reserve. So here we see some kind of claiming of Bitcoin. This not only reduces the Bitcoin in circulation available to the public, but additionally sets the incentive for the US to increase its seizing efforts, a hypothesis that I've shared. Think increased AML KYC. She says, while I'm no fan of the strategic reserve in general, this draft is an even bigger disappointment than Senator Loomis's proposed Bitcoin Act. To compare this to how El Salvador has implemented Bitcoin, which I admit I initially wasn't a fan of either. ES directly gives citizens rights to use Bitcoin as money, which is a huge upside to benefit people and not just the national security state. I don't know if that's changed since this tweet, but I know there's been some El Salvador developments. Anyway, she says, no offense, but the next time you're invited to draft policy for a nation state, maybe talk to people actually building Bitcoin instead of to the children that just graduated college, running a think tank, and a guy that owns a magazine. A friend of the show, Lola Leeds, calls out other friend of the show, David Zell, and his buddy, Dave Bailey. She is not best pleased. She says, incredibly unprofessional conduct here by BPI, a huge risk to anyone using Bitcoin for anything other than investment, and a testament to the people involved being more interested in furthering their own importance than to empower people with a money without state. And I know there was a good meme from, I'm trying to think, Nate did one. I'll have to find it. And here we have the meme from a friend of mine, Nate Beef of Bacon. I don't think yet friend of the show. We should correct that, Phil.
We should have him on the show. I don't know why we haven't.
Yeah, I don't know why we haven't. He says, the classic Trojan horse meme, and Bitcoiners wanting number go up at all costs, welcoming the strategic Bitcoin reserve, which seems to be ushering in the illegalization of self-custody and transfer. Again, something I've been talking about throughout this show of there seems different ways that self-custody is being undermined or incentivized away from, maybe some legal, maybe some economic. Is this an attack on Bitcoin? Question mark. Yeah, is it hyperbolic? Yes. Have we got any bans yet? No, not yet. But it's about, is there direction towards this sort of thing? Or rather, from my perspective, I look at it as, does this stuff enable better incentives for the state and Bitcoin versus the individual in Bitcoin? Your thoughts, gentlemen?
Are we saying that the Bitcoin reserve legislation that's been proposed is saying that it's illegal to self-custody?
No.
I'm not sure why the connection's being made.
It's the connection that's made.
It's kind of like a logical leap.
What you do firstly, you incentivize custodied assets, right? Mm-hmm. So things like MicroStrategy, right? And I think you can argue shitcoins as well, and stable coins, and there's a whole bunch of things. But anything that's custodied is seizable, right? More seizable. That's why we like self custody, because it makes it less seizable, right?
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, if you incentivize away from that, then people put the money elsewhere, which needs to happen because Bitcoin is a bearer asset. So unless you actually move it out of self custody, or unless it sits with these custodians, you can't then do the change that then ring fences that in, right? I think you have to first have the custodians holding all the Bitcoin, or a lot of it, before you then go, well, we're going to make it so that the only way this Bitcoin is held by US citizens is by these good custodians who are going to look after it extra well for our good people.
Okay. I have a theory that the kind of person that is willing to self-custody or sees the importance in it has already self-custodied already. You know, they already own Bitcoin and hold it themselves. I don't know if there's a lot of people left that are going to see the light anyway. What do you guys think about that?
I just look at it as like a vector. It's a bad vector on that aspect. Like, it's a good vector for number go up. Like, there are trade-offs. Like, what?
I do think I do, when I zoom out, it does seem to me as though the story that's being shaped, right, is that essentially, right, like, whatever powers it be at the state level have decided that, okay, we're willing to accept this thing. It's like the bed of Procrustes, right? We're willing to accept this thing, just make it fit into this box. And then for the people who don't know the bed of Procrustes analogy, right? It was the, I don't know if it was the hotel owner or whatever it was, the king. He had people come to visit him, and if they were too tall, he'd cut off their legs so they fit on the bed. And if they were too short, he'd stretch them out to fit the bed. But the point is that it was always about fitting the bed, right? Fitting the box. So I do kind of see this as like kind of this tug of war battle playing out. But to Nate's point, right? And this kind of goes back to Frito's point as well, I think. You know, I do believe that this is somewhat of a Trojan horse. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not 100% sure that the TradFi bros and all of their money are going to be able to force Bitcoin's ossification into a store of value only asset, because it, unlike equities, right? Unlike these other things, you can do so much more with Bitcoin, right? It is programmable money. It's not even just money. It's a network and it's a token, right? And
if it's in self-custody.
If it's in self-custody, correct. Yes. What's up? Are we going off the rails? Am I lost?
No, but it's an important point. Do you guys mean ossification in terms of code or ossification in terms of legal things relating to Bitcoin?
I'll be honest with you. I kind of go back and forth, and I think it's ossification of code. I don't really think about the legal implications because Bitcoin, yeah.
How's that bad though? Because Bitcoin already does what I wanted to do. And I'd be afraid of a proof of stake social attack where they change it to do what they want to do.
It won't do that for everyone. This is the point. I think you're like, Mr. Hodl's in the same camp of like, well, I just want to be able to send and hold and receive Bitcoin. Sure, but if you want that to be true for many, many, many people, then we do, I think, need some scaling solutions.
I'm also talking about the ossification narrative, right? Again, this goes back to the whole thing. Like, keep in mind, right? BlackRock and these institutions, like, they don't give a shit about Bitcoin, the network. They really don't. Okay. They care about Bitcoin, the NGU asset. That's what they actually care about. So it's to define what I mean by ossification, it's ossification of the narrative for me. And that's what to me, that's what's being pushed. Yeah.
Everyone needs to go back to Hans's thread again. Again, this is the same thing. This is
right.
Okay. Like, yeah, it's about the asset, not the network. But if the asset is custodied, then but you spend between custodians, then you're using their network. You're not using.
But that's why I'm saying. But that's why I'm saying, right? These custodians, they don't care about the network. They don't give a fuck.
Like, I would actually be afraid of ossifying the code and making it so that you can't do self-custody and direct peer-to-peer. Like, I'd be afraid of changing the properties.
Well, I'd never run that shit. Bitcoin. You'd never run that shit. I wouldn't run that shit. So we don't even. I mean. Yeah, to your point, I totally agree. Like, fuck that.
Yeah, but like, what happens when the U.S. spends trillions of dollars on this thing, and they have more funds to run stuff than we do? Like, what happens then? Like this, like that's the danger of having giant players. Is they have more resources than we do, so we can run whatever we want. At some point, it's not going to matter.
Well, we're gonna see how the game theory plays out.
Like,
what's up, Walton?
I would want it ossified and not changeable, and then we got to work within those rules. I think that would be great. But like, you know, like when everybody changed to Taproot, like everybody changed to Taproot, because you know the players and said, oh, you guys should all change and upgrade. I don't think everybody who changed to Taproot understood every single thing in that code.
No.
Right? And that's dangerous. If somebody has their life savings in a thing and you can just change it, like you could fuck it up. And that to me, we won already. So like, why are we taking these risks?
Because it doesn't scale to everyone in self-custody unless we do additional stuff.
And the thing about Taproot,
bugs to fix as well.
Yeah. And the thing about Taproot, I was on another show at the time when Taproot was was being rolled out, and we had tons of people on, right, coders for Bitcoin, right, that were all working on Taproot and stuff like that, and every single person just told me about all the amazing things that were coming down the pike. Not a single person could tell me about what the negative use cases were. So.
People started spamming the network with all kinds of shit, right?
Well, okay, so there you go, right? That brings up the other point of it, right? Because now spam is subjective. It's like, I don't disagree with you. I think that stuff is crap, but I'm a freedom maximalist, and they are using the network within its rules. So
I don't know, like we could say, well, it's not perfect, so let's keep fucking with it so it can scale to everybody. I mean, like, okay, but this is like humanity's last hope. Like, that's kind of not good.
And you see, this is why the discussion is so important, right? Like, this is why it's not such a clear, cut case. So anyways,
it's pretty clear cut, like, don't fuck with it.
Well, definitely don't fuck with it. But in terms of this ossification narrative, we can't even define what we mean by that entirely.
Mm-hmm. Like that legislation with the SBR thing, like that would be like, oh, and people can't self-custody it. In theory, that would be like kind of a regulatory ossification as opposed to the code. But I mean, we can't count on regulation, right? It's all just we're always going to be at risk of rug pulls if we rely on regulation. But like, if we need to be able to count on the code to do what it does.
Walton, anything else for REKT?
Lastly, on REKT is people that have more wealth but aren't using that to like free up their time. Because what should you be doing? You're like, okay, maybe you don't want the Lambo anymore. Like, but you're like, hey, what should you do now? Like, well, I'm gonna read a tweet for you. You need to be Slowmaxxing. You need to be reading long, fat books. You need to be making 48-hour chocolate chip cookies, maybe in a carnivore, diet-friendly way. You need to spend hours watching wildlife. You need to spend 15-plus minutes making your coffee. You need to breathe in and breathe out. You need to be slow. As I quite like to say often, rushing is for peasants, and I think this rings true. All of you new Bitcoin kings and queens with your newfound wealth, I hope you are Slowmaxxing, or your neurological system will be the one that is wrecked. I'm sure the doctor will agree with me. That's it. Thank you.
I Slowmax all the time when I watch Saylor talk.
Sure.
Everybody's stuck Slowmaxxing when he talks.
So Saylor's not a shitcoin if it helps your cortisol. Okay, whatever.
Oh, God. All right, guys. All right. That's going to wrap up REKT. And we are going to move it on over to the Hopium.
The Hopium.
For Hopium, let's dive into it. We have a wide range of Hopium. Let's start off right away with Graham Krizek. For the people who don't know who he is, right? He's the CEO of Voltage Cloud. And let's dive into it because I think this is a good time. I've noticed that during bull runs, right, Lightning, at least the last two bull runs, Lightning just gets fudded. So let's have some fun here. This is juicy. The Lightning Network is the best method of transacting in the entire crypto ecosystem. That's right. It just debunks your shitcoins. You just don't want to believe it. Period. It is the fastest and cheapest method. We're in another wave of FUD about Lightning is dead. While everyone else is chasing new L2s, fake self-custody, and hype trains, us at Voltage are doubling down on Lightning. We're working on a lot of new stuff that's going to continue to push the network forward. We're striving to make big impacts for our customers and creating experiences that are truly better than the TradFi alternatives. Not sharing empty press releases. Oh, I feel like that was a shot at Dennis Porter. Just kind of putting that out there. But yeah, I like that take. I never thought Lightning was dead. Anybody that actually uses Lightning, anybody that's ever set up a Lightning node, anybody that actually has had or has Lightning channels knows, right? Like, yeah, it ain't perfect, but it's growing and it keeps getting better. The user experience keeps getting better. The actual flow keeps getting better. And as we can see, the total public Lightning capacity is not diminishing. Okay? We're still over 5,000 Bitcoin that is publicly known. We have no idea what's on the private channels. We have no clue. Okay? So all of this FUD from the shitcoiners, remember, at the end of their rainbow, it's always the same thing. This is broken on Bitcoin. This doesn't work with Bitcoin. All of this is bad in Bitcoin. Buy my shitcoin. It's always buy my shitcoin. So just keep that in mind. Anyways, moving on.
Hey, Phil,
unless you had
that all checks out to me, but then if Lightning's a thing, why do we need to change the main chain to scale?
I didn't actually say anything about changing the main chain.
That's a serious question.
Because if you actually want enough people to be able to run their own Lightning nodes, then you need things like channel factories in order to be able to open and close enough channels.
Okay.
But
at
the
least
thing
from
is,
my understanding, like I'm usually pretty good on the numbers side of.
Yeah, but that doesn't affect our hard cap. That doesn't affect any of Bitcoin's actual properties.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, just trying to understand the arguments.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Oh no, it's all good. It's all good.
But I also think we've got like a weird this is like a weird bunch of kind of custodial L2s that people are essentially using and like batching transactions through custodian. Like, do you know what I mean? Like people, there's different ways that people are kind of scaling things already that you don't see on chain and you don't just see in Lightning liquidity.
Walton gave me a sailor sigh.
It's pretty sweet. All right, moving on from Lightning. Let's Walton's favorite, Scamson Mao. Here we go. Let's do it. I often see people asking the question, if everyone is buying and there's no supply, then why is the price going down? It's just the market behaving irrationally with what limited Bitcoin supply is left. Trust your instincts. The supply shock is coming. Look, I've said this before. I always appreciate the Hopium from Samson, but I genuinely think that it just gets noobs wrecked, right? I just think he overshoots expectations and creates that. Like, I've heard this supply shock shit, for 6 fucking years.
Is it coming before or after Infinite Fleet?
Dude, who knows? Where is Infinite Fleet, by the way?
I really like Samson. He was really nice to me once, but I don't know why he pushes the Hopium so hard.
Because he's bought out by the Bitfinex mafia. Like I've explained this. It's all about incentives. All about incentives.
It is.
Yeah.
This just gets people wrecked. Sorry.
It is dangerous.
It is. I know nobody wants to hear the balance takes, but guess what? The balance takes aren't gonna end you up in the fucking street with a bunch of shit that a bunch of debt that you owe because you decided to borrow some ridiculous loan against your house because Omega candle. Like, sorry.
I wonder if in the Trump era he'll rename his company to Jan 6 instead of Jan 3.
It's not bad. Okay. Moving on from this. All right, guys, as though we haven't talked enough about MicroStrategy, Blackrock, ossification, here we go. The shitcoiners love these narratives. They love the idea. They grasp onto things, and Bitcoiners are like, we're just as bad. Okay, so I'm not sitting there like pointing at one saying like we're not. We are just as bad in a different way. So here we go from this Cardano Yoda. BlackRock published a video with this Cardano. Many colors. There is no guarantee that Bitcoin's 21 million supply cap will not be changed. Does it mean they control more than 51% of the hash rate? No, it doesn't. It doesn't mean shit. It means absolutely nothing. You should be much more concerned with the fucking blinders you have on that made you go and buy a total fucking affinity scam. That's what you should be more concerned about. But the thing is this, right? The shitcoiners absolutely need to create an idea of fear around Bitcoin. I saw this back in 2017. This is no different. This is the same song and dance. Create fear, buy my shitcoin. So yeah.
Am I mistaken? ETFs are normally exchangeable for the actual thing, right?
That's only if they have in-kind redemptions, which we do not yet.
It's interesting that none of these have in-kind redemptions. I think
not yet.
Because if they had in-kind redemptions, then maybe I back off on some of this kind of supply cap kind of stuff and printing paper stuff. But they don't. Why don't they? They could. You could have I actually think that would be really actually quite interesting if you had in-kind redemptions for Bitcoin ETFs. Then suddenly the whole TradFi world goes, wait a second, why don't we have in-kind redemptions for everything? And they all go on a journey about, well, custody's kind of a shitcoin. That would be kind of interesting. Fuck Saylor. Let's have an in-kind redemption ETF.
Just so you know, Walton, it is in the works. And when I read the initial prospectus for the Blackrock ETF, again, this is all right. Supposedly, Larry Fink was actually asking for this. Supposedly, BlackRock was actually advocating for in-kind redemptions. Now, I don't know if that's just
over Lightning. It'd be beautiful. This would be kind of interesting. But why don't they? Because you can play games with custody's assets, right? You can print custody's assets. How do we know they actually have it? And didn't Coinbase actually change something in their agreement with BlackRock? Because BlackRock said, do you actually have the Bitcoin? And they're like, well, we're sort when we open the windows and
it's there.
Yeah. You guys remember Crypto Bobby?
Yeah.
2017, he's like, I like Bitcoin. I like Bitcoin. Oh, Cardano's pretty interesting. I was like, oh no.
Yeah, that's how they go down with the ship. All right.
To the moon.
Yeah, right. Look at what happened to that guy. Hey, look, and you can trust him. Morgan Creek Capital, right? Morgan Creek Digital Assets or whatever the fuck they're called. Hey, where are those guys today? Anyways,
Morgan Creek.
That's right. Without a fucking paddle. All right. Last, I think it's the last story here for Hopium. Let's do it. Predator put out this tweet. IMF and El Salvador finally reached an agreement, and it's big yikes. Not only are they eliminating Article 7, as previously reported, but they also removing the ability for citizens to pay taxes in Bitcoin. Chivo Wallet is also apparently getting axed. So, just so people understand, okay? El Salvador is still buying Bitcoin, okay? It's these other things that have changed. Okay, that's what it is. And now I'm not saying that as an excuse to say, oh, this isn't as bad as it seems. I'm just trying to explain this for clarity, right? So businesses are no longer required to accept Bitcoin, okay, for payment, and they're going to be winding down the Chivo wallets, okay? So that's two things. And then the third thing is that you will no longer be able to pay your taxes in Bitcoin. So this has nothing to do with El Salvador not stacking. Okay, those are the three things. Now, is this a major backpedal? In my eyes, yes, it is. Okay, accepting a $1.4 billion loan from the IMF, which honestly, in terms of a country, seems like absolute chump change. Right? Like it's ridiculous. It's like, why did you just bend the knee for fucking pennies? Like that it just, I feel like there's no rhyme or reason. And then of course, right, like Bitcoiners that are just hopeless cheerleaders of El Salvador are just sitting there creating, these ridiculous long threads as to why it's not a cell phone and why it's not a big deal and this stuff. So look, you shouldn't be cheerleading for these countries. Okay, you shouldn't be cheerleading for any state. It doesn't make a difference. Okay, the state is not your friend. It never is. Okay, the state enforces violence. It is that simple. You are there to be, we are here to be governed by the state, regardless of which state it is. So, you know what? I've always been hey, good for them that they're stacking Bitcoin, good for them that they're doing this stuff, but this is why you don't want to find yourself as a cheerleader for this stuff, because then your camera dies while you're trying to make a good point, you know, and then it's all just lost. You know, this is what happens. But yeah, guys, what are your thoughts on this whole thing? Am I like too extreme? Am I not extreme enough? Like, is the IMF, you know, is this El Salvador backpedaling? And do you think that these cheerleaders have a leg to stand on with making excuses for El Salvador's behavior, or specifically this agreement?
It seems like the leadership there is pretty based, and I just have my initial thought is I think maybe they just understand how much leverage they have, and maybe it's not that much. That's not chump change for them, because their whole Bitcoin pile is like $600 million, right? That's not like they're not like a hugely prosperous place, I guess. But I don't know. Maybe he just realized that he just didn't have any leverage to resist that. But I didn't like seeing that, of course.
It's interesting when we talk about El Salvador buying Bitcoin, because I think what happens is they call up their broker and they say, okay, can we buy some Bitcoin? And then that Bitcoin goes and sits in a BitGo vault with, you know, US custodians. Yeah. So once again, back to custody.
This is what it is, right? And this goes back to my whole narrative ossification point, right? Maybe you don't, you know, it's like you don't need to attack the code, right? You don't need to attack the custodians or anything like that. All you need to do, it's a social attack with the ossification of the narrative. And then people just lay down their own arms. Anyways. I know it's supposed to be hopium and we're supposed to feel better about it, but unfortunately, like, this is what happens. This is exactly
That's why we have
happens.
you guys, though.
You know? But yeah.
Not too many people say the right thing, but you guys have been doing it for a long time. I totally respect that. And you guys do it through bear markets, which is like really hard. So cheers to you.
Yeah, nobody wants to hear that shit, especially in bear markets, right? They just want to hear why the pot at the end of the rainbow is going to be more Bitcoin than you could imagine, and it goes up forever.
So
all right.
Keep us honest, guys.
And same for us. Go ahead, Walton.
Just one more thing.
Sure.
Just grab something for you.
Yeah.
That is sweet.
Yeah. The only thing more scarce than Bitcoin is your time and shirts from the Children of the Corn, Bitcoin Plebcast, the world's best premier Bitcoin Plebcast.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for the shout out.
Mine is all worn out. It's all worn out.
That's what she said.
Oh. Okay, Walton. Come on.
I'll send you guys new ones. I happen to have a stock of those.
It's one of my favorite shirts.
You wear yours? No.
Yeah, of course I wear mine. Dude, are you kidding me? Do you know how many compliments I get?
Like twice.
I get, honestly, people see it all. They're like, I love that shirt. They have no idea what it is, but now it's in their head.
That's cool. Oh, before I forget, I got to give a shout out to my old partner, LC Hoddle, out there.
I hope he's doing good, man. Haven't seen LC in a while. I hope you guys.
If you don't know, he's Phil's Spanish cousin. You know, of course. So we have C and we have LC.
Yeah. I touch base with him once in a while. He sounds like he's doing well. I hope he comes back and blesses us with his thoughts soon.
Yeah.
I just hope he doesn't bless us with quite the frequency of scat memes, but each to their own.
Yeah, I don't miss those.
No, I don't miss the scat memes. I definitely don't.
But I respect it.
Yeah, exactly. I respect the game.
Yeah,
you got to respect the game. All right, guys. On that note, that is going to wrap up this episode of Pleb Underground Weekly Show. Before we go, Frito, I have no idea how people can actually get in touch with you except Telegram. So how do people get in touch with you?
They don't really. I
Social
guess.
Media, they don't, right?
Hopefully, I'll
come
back.
Like questions about like parts of their body, and like they want to send you a picture and be like, "Hey, can I get a diagnosis, doctor?"
You know what they could do? They could actually go to one of my posts on what do they call it? Substack? Is that what it's called? And actually, like, they could write a reply there if they really want to get in touch with me, but nobody actually goes to my Substack, so I doubt.
All right, well, we'll put the link in the show notes, and you know, then they have fewer excuses.
That's right.
But, appreciate having me on, guys.
Absolutely, dude. It was absolutely awesome.
Brothers.
Yeah, man, it was awesome to have you on. Guys, don't forget to check us out on our audio-only platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. If you want to stream us sats, check us out on fountain.fm. How do we end this, Walton?
Yellow, you need to keep doing Don't Stop Believing, because, like, come on, we got to fix this, man. Fuck 58K. Fuck shitcoins. Thank you.
Peace.
Thanks, guys.
More toxic than the most toxic Bitcoin max.